Hello, everybody. Welcome. Hi everyone. My name's Cheryl House. I'm a director of Energy Capital, which is part of the West Midlands Combined Authority, and I've been asked to speak and give a perspective of local authorities on funding and investment. We've only got 5 minutes, so I will do my best. I think the reason that I've been asked is, as well as working at the Combined Authority now with all of our constituent local authorities to secure funding and powers into the region to deliver on smart local energy systems. We also work specifically with local authorities on a lot of the PFA projects that have already been referred to, specifically one around developing a regional energy systems operator for the West Midlands. And I also am a board member of a community interested company called Communities Renewables, who looks to put community energy assets into community ownership. So yeah, hopefully I can give a bit of a broad perspective. In terms of, for those of you who don't know us, we are based in the West Midlands. We're a smart energy innovation partnership that, as I said, aims to bring both the powers and the money necessary to deliver smart energy systems into the region. We're a public-private partnership. If you could click on the slide again, please, Anna. And we have a board that's representative of what is good guidance at the moment on how you need to have appropriate governance to set up to deliver on these really complex systems. So we're well supported, which is really great. In terms of what I want to go through now, if you could click again, please, Anna, I will just quickly cover some of the challenges from a local authority's perspective, a few of the responses, and finally touch on some tools at the end of the process. I'm fairly pragmatic, so I'll try not to labour too much on the challenges, but I think it is recognised, Patrick's already mentioned that this isn't a statutory responsibility for local authorities. We've already heard that not everybody knows what local authorities are doing on this, and it's because a lot of the time people are trying very hard to do as much as they can with very limited resources. So what often happens is both funding and the approach that local authorities are taking ends up being around projects specifically. And the way the government tends to fund things to ensure they're getting good value for money is also very project focused. I know that this is necessary for Treasury to be able to demonstrate value for money, but it does make it difficult sometimes to develop those more integrated solutions. And I think it's an important thing to say, if you could just click again, please, Anna, that this also tends to lean towards the local authorities who have the most resources already able to access the funding that's available. So the concepts that we've seen recently around having shovel-ready projects don't necessarily help us with the levelling up concept, should we say. I know this has been recognised and there's resources available to try and help local authorities bid for money, and Patrick's already mentioned the hubs that are around to help do that, but it's also not just about that. It's getting political support to be able to do this, to ask for the money to do these sorts of projects, and then it's being able to deliver within the timescales and the criteria that are set. So I think there's a more fundamental issue for a lot of us, which is about the responsibility for delivering net zero, the responsibility for being part of the energy system and the solutions for decarbonisation. In terms of, if we could just click again, please. And I guess the key thing for me on that is about equitability. We've talked about the transition to, a just transition. And in order to achieve that, we do need to have something that addresses this inequality issue, where those who are ready get more money and those who aren't are unable to benefit from the funds that are available. We saw that with the first round of the Green Homes Grants LAD scheme, particularly in the West Midlands, where I think only Coventry was able to actually bid for the money. Many of the other local authorities we spoke to just weren't ready or able to do that. So we have got some solutions, but just as a sort of plea for a reminder to consider how we look at the equitability issues around this and helping those local authorities who don't have the resources to come along on the journey with us. In terms of the next challenge, I've put silos versus systems. I think we've already picked up today that smart local energy systems are what we're trying to deliver here, and that doesn't necessarily mean an individual project. It's how these things integrate and how we can get the best value and ensure that we're investing effectively in our infrastructure to support that. That means cross-departmental work, and both funding that we've seen up until now and investment is a bit of a tricky issue when it comes to this kind of systems approach. The innovation money that's been available up until now has been great in terms of helping with that integration of lots of different elements. But how do we deliver business as usual? What happens when this stops being innovation and we've got the next round of local authorities ready to deliver? How do we get that cross-departmental system working for business as usual? And that, as I say, is also very relevant in terms of investment risk as well. So it's quite easy to raise funding for particular projects where they're low risk, and you can see how you can manage the risk on those schemes. It's much more difficult when you start looking, as we are through the PIFA projects, on the more integrated systems type approaches. We've seen this on things like solar PV, where I think when I first started working in the sector, solar PV had a payback globally of about 100 years, and everyone thought it would never deliver. And one of the fundamental reasons across the globe why it's now one of the most cost-effective and easy to deliver technologies is because that level of risk is low. The technology risk, the operational risk, and in many cases the planning risk. And I think that is an important thing to think about from a local authority perspective on how we can help reduce risk and make these projects fly. So keep getting away from the negative, if we can, move on a couple of clicks. And again, please. Some of the solutions to these issues that we are hoping to see. Obviously, looking at collaborative approaches is really helpful. So at the Combined Authority, we've been trying to work with the local authorities to pull together consortium bids for funding, making sure that we've got both those local authorities who are leading and have good resources and are able to deliver some of the really innovative solutions that government are looking for, particularly in relation to the retrofit programmes, how we can make that work, but also bringing along the local authorities with us that don't have those resources, perhaps don't have the political backing yet because they haven't identified the real opportunities in their area. So that value and collaboration, I think, is really important, but also the making sure that we've got the leaders and those who are learning pulling together in the same way. Next one, please. One of the particular asks in the comprehensive spending review submission that a number of the regions put forward was around a single infrastructure pot. That's clearly not going to happen in relation to this particular round, given that it's only a single year solution, but I think the concept is actually really important, and that's how do we ensure that we are drawing funds from all the different elements that local authorities are responsible for to help deliver these kinds of solutions. So this is where obviously transport is a really big opportunity to make sure that we're delivering net zero solutions for transport, and they're integrated with our energy and building solutions. So I think I'd like to flag that as still as a useful concept to think about how we might be able to do some of those cross-departmental solutions going forward. Next click, please, Anna. And finally, for me, in terms of thinking about the public sector's role in risk reduction, the projects that we're working on at the moment, particularly the West Midlands Regional Energy Systems Operator project, is really showing how complex some of these issues are. But it reminded me when I again think back to kind of the work I used to do on renewables deployment and looking at, for example, wind energy. One of the reasons why wind energy was considered expensive was because of the risk associated with planning and the fact that nobody knew where they could put a scheme. So developers had to take through 20 into the planning system in order to get consent for one, and that one then had to fund the costs of all of those schemes that didn't get through. I think we need to think about that. It's not just about planning, but how can the local authorities play a role in this, in risk reduction around schemes going forward? And there are a lot of mechanisms and levers that they already have that can support with that, and possibly others that could be secured to enable us to help work out how these smart local energy systems projects can be reduced in terms of their risk, because they are so complex. Thanks, Anna. Next slide. So just to finish, so how we were looking at some of the tools, Patrick mentioned that we were doing some work with them on energy innovation zones, which is just coming to completion. And we're going to look at how some of the really useful tools, such as the cost benefit analysis tools, the value capture tools that have been developed by the Carbon Trust as part of that project, can be integrated into the ERIS toolkit over the coming months. There are obviously lots of outcomes that are being developed through the PIFA projects, and I think it's absolutely critical to find ways to share those. So we're looking at launching an ArcGIS hub later in the year, which will be able to share some of those data sources that we've been looking at, and how important they are in terms of helping to identify solutions, and again reduce risk, reduce time in terms of development processes. And then, yeah, hopefully that will enable those who are working on these projects in great detail to share, and those who are coming up the learning curve to benefit from the learning that's taken place. But the one thing I will say is these are very complex subjects, and it is really important that we all work together and share that learning as much as we can, because there is so much to be done.